Everything that we do go over today will be available on our website, which is aafcos.com, and you can go /Addies, ADDYS. That'll bring you right to the About page for everything about the competition. On that page, there are 3 really easy to see big red buttons. First one is professional categories, second one is student categories, and the third one is a cheat sheet. I do believe we also have some cheat sheets around here somewhere. Huh?
They're passed out.
No, they have like screenshots on them. I see one at the very end. Do you mind holding? Yeah, there we go. So if we could maybe distribute a couple of those so we can make sure they get passed around a little bit. Those more so, again, they're kind of step-by-step how to use the portal for which you'll submit your Addies through. And while we don't have a lot of copies printed today, again, they'll all be on that website. But if you ever do have questions, our email is a simple Gmail account. Feel free to just shoot us an email and we'll respond back as soon as possible. All right, so probably one of the biggest things that we do struggle with when we first start looking at Addies is trying to find that category, exactly what it fits in. Category really comes down to what that judge is going to be thinking in his or her head when they look at your piece. So for instance, if you have a billboard and it has a really great illustration on it and maybe even has a really awesome logo that you did there, and you submitted it though for the outdoor marketing category, it's strictly going to be judged for that only. It will not be judged on how great that illustration looks or how technical it was. It will not be judged on, again, how great that logo looks on it. It really is about, does this fit as a great billboard? Does it meet the mission from what I can tell from that piece? You know, when we look at a website, there's even categories for what is a consumer site versus a business-to-business site. Those little nuances are going to play into what the judge's head is thinking when they're going into that website, putting themselves in the shoes of a business owner and walking through that site, or putting themselves as a consumer walking through that site. So those are typically the biggest questions that I do get is, hey, I've got this one project, I don't quite know what category it goes into. And those typically can be pretty, they do have really great descriptions, but again, there are some gray areas, so don't ever feel like you shouldn't ask what that is. Any kind of questions about those? Cool. So there are 2 main deadlines to kind of think about. First one is the early bird deadline. This one's a little bit more for professionals because there is an early bird discount. Students, your price is flat and it's the same no matter what. But for professionals, there is a discount. So if you are going to be submitting Addies this year, Wednesday the 6th, next week, is that deadline. Now that deadline does not mean that you have to come prepared with everything that we're going over tonight. The absolute most important thing is that you got your order in. Essentially that you've ordered your Addies. You do have to include some digital representation. It can be like a screenshot or a PDF of it, but you don't have to bring all the physical parts yet. Again, it's mostly about that billing that the date occurred before the 6th. Otherwise, the other deadline that you have to pay attention to is not until January. January 5th is the physical drop-off and deadline, and that's where everything that really we're going to be looking at together today is due. So we have a great holiday break in between, perfect time to procrastinate until January 4th, but don't do that. I have done that myself, and I ran out of paper, I ran out of ink, and it just makes this whole thing a whole lot more stressful, and it doesn't necessarily make you feel that great by the time you dropped it off. Go ahead and come in, guys. No, it's not at Comcast. The drop-off is TBD right now. We don't have the location quite yet. But to that point, if you guys have not gone and joined our newsletter, that is the best way to find, to get that information out. We do typically 2 emails that go out every single week, one for members and one for everyone that joined that list. Students, you are free to join, so there is no reason really you shouldn't be an AdFed member right now because there's no cost to you. As professionals, we do have to pay. But it's pretty minimal, and it does get you discounts on Addies, it gets you discounts at events. It really will pay for itself if you do utilize AdFed as much as you can throughout a year. So, when you do go to aafcos.com/Addies and you're ready to click that one button that is to go ahead and submit your artwork, you're gonna see a screen. And actually, can I have one of those packets?
Yeah. I took notes already on that.
No, I don't think the laptop would be as efficient to use. Thank you. This one. And you're gonna see a screen like this. And again, we'll pass this around a little bit, but basically there's 2 very easy, quick buttons to look at. There is, I'm a professional or I'm a student. Both of those are really for new registrants. So if this is your 2nd or 3rd time, we've had the system in place now for about 3 years. but it does hold your account from last year. So if you did submit projects last year, go ahead and actually use the sidebar and log in, or retrieve that password if you don't have that anymore. But again, that's step one, A or B, am I a student or professional? I don't think I have a screenshot of the next one. Then your next screenshot. It's kind of like a wizard. It really does try to walk you through. So the next screenshot is going to be asking you to pick that top category. So as we look at our category sheets, sorry to take, these are yours, right? You had your notes, cool. All right, so as you actually start to get into trying to pick those categories, kind of pay attention right now, at least in the PDF, there are some big bold headers. That's your first step. You kind of pick the top tier category of what this piece is going to fall into. So that could be its print or its broadcast, could be something with digital. We actually just added VR this year too, so we're hoping to get some agencies that are starting to do some VR, putting some samples out there. But basically, again, you're going to pick that top tier category. From there, it's going to kind of work its way down, just like in science class, we do have a taxonomy. It's going to drill you all the way down until basically you're left with what you start to see of these little 3-digit codes. That is the ultimate category that your project's going to fall into, and then the corresponding description that you read in this packet is exactly what that judge is going to use for criteria when they're looking at your piece. So because there are a lot of subcategories, that's where you really want to be critical and making sure that this was an illustrative piece, it's not a poster, and I want it to be judged for illustration. So make sure you are in that illustration category. Once you've gotten past that step in the wizard, you picked your category, depending on what type of project it was, and it's going to start asking you for a URL if it's a website, a link to a video if it needs like a YouTube video for the judge to be able to watch your video presentation. PDFs, JPEGs, any kind of flattened images that you want to upload to the website as references. It's going to try to gather all of those assets. And basically through this step, you're starting to build out a shopping cart through the portal. You don't really have to check out quite yet. It's going to do the same thing of saying, are you done, or do you want to submit some more Addies? And you can kind of continue this process all the way until you're done and you've really filled out that cart until it finally does ask you to check out at the very end. Once you do check out, then you're going to be given two things, and these are two things that you're going to want to print and hold on to. The first one looks just like this. Everybody's looks just like this. And I'll get to why this one's been cut short here in a second. But this sheet is very important. You're going to want to print probably 2 or 3 copies of it even for every single submission. Reason being is that you're going to want to make sure that this sheet gets applied to the outside envelope of your package. So when you come to us and you hand this off to us, we can easily identify exactly what category that this is in. We can identify who submitted it, their contact information, and again, everything that should be included with this particular submission. And then on the inside of it, and the reason why these are cut, and we'll pass a lot of these out so you can see them a little closer in front of you, there's actually 4 different labels printed at the very bottom. These are ones that you just kind of cut out individually for each other. And you want to make sure that they're adhered to every single one of your pieces. Reason being, when we actually lay these projects out for judges, this piece, on some cases, may go right underneath it. It may go underneath a table that has a table skirt. They have to be able to correspond this number and this code to their whole roster of all the pieces that they're judging. And they want to make sure, of course, that they're judging the right piece at the right time because it may have shifted out of order. You never know when a judge is really getting handsy and they really liked it and they put it over here. Next judge comes along and they may be looking at the wrong piece. So they always have to check this number, again, against their own list of what they're judging. The other printout that you'll get is the invoice for everything that you ordered. When we actually get to that drop-off party, you're going to submit to us the invoice that shows everything that you did ordered. We just have to make sure that everything's paid for. And then we start to double check and make sure that you've got all these. Colorado Springs, we actually do serve Colorado abroad. We have people from Durango, Fort Collins, Boulder, and Denver that all submit their artwork still through the Pikes Peak region AdFed, and that's because we are the AdFed in Colorado. So yeah, your artwork can very well be placed with people that are out of market, and that kind of is the local competition. Now that I said that big C word, I should also mention this is not a competition against the people next to you. If I did a logo, Clint did a logo, it's not us competing against each other. It's how good is that logo by itself. So you're not going to be judged on how good was your ad campaign versus that ad campaign, this website over that website. It is, did it do the project right for the category that they submitted in? So when Addies actually comes around, that's why we may have several golds and several silvers all for the same category. That's because they all did great on that point scale to get those awards. But there can only be one best of show. That's another thing. Multiple golds, multiple silvers, one best of show.
But for each category?
Not for each category. There's a best of broadcast, a best of print, a best of digital, and a best of one more. Is it just the three?
And then there's,
And then the final overall best of show. Yep, that's the four. That's where there's four. Yep. Otherwise, there definitely can be multiple categories. Yes, sir.
So how does that work when it goes up to the next level? You said there was a state level and then there was like a regional level.
Yeah.
How do they base it? Like, is it the gold roll goes on?
Any gold can.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it's like, it's just kind of a flat based on who is. It's not really a competition at any point in this, is what you're saying.
Not against each other. Again, there can be multiple golds, but it's not going to be, again, like you, maybe someone in Utah also did an advertisement campaign, so did you. You two are not competing against each other. It's how good, again, did that campaign do. And very well, a lot of those pieces, because it gets so critical, like everyone will get more critical, where your gold was here may easily be a silver, or may not even register as a silver. It's a really interesting experience. Through AdFed, actually, they rotate it within the districts where those regional judges are. So actually, last year, Colorado Springs did get to host it. So myself and a couple other people that worked with the judges, we actually got, gosh, I think probably 300 or 400 total submissions from this region. Locally, we had about 140 submissions. So you can kind of see, again, it kind of really builds up. But we filled out an entire banquet hall at the Antlers full of artwork. And it was an awesome experience because you get to see what people, like our region consists of Nevada, mid to north California, Utah, Arizona. It's kind of really this whole pocket that's on the left-hand side, and Hawaii.
And you said gold automatically goes on for the category? Or do we have to
In professionals it does. Students, I do believe, actually have to pay. But I can double check that and email everybody here.
You also can move on as a silver if you are willing to pay for it.
And we did have a student actually go on and get silver.
Yep. It can happen. It will happen, actually, right? Who here brought some work? Anyone bring anything that you want to look at that maybe you've just been noodling on beforehand about what the category could be?
No pressure.
Thank you. Put it on the table. So, printed piece?
Yeah, it's for beer menu.
Okay, right on. So, and you're a student, right? Cool. So let's do a little exercise together, guys. Who has a packet for students? Sorry, at the very top left, there should be a little student in big, bold, maybe a condensed font underneath the American Advertising Federation Awards logo. Yeah, I think that's a student one. So let's try to find and hunt down this category. So this is a printed piece. So that's a good place to start. And in the setting of this piece, who's really going to be kind of looking at it? Mostly consumers, I would think, right? And it's probably nothing that goes outdoor, probably something that's more internal, feels promotional maybe because it is promoting a food. Collateral material, that's feeling pretty hot. You want to read that description for us?
It just says stationery package, single multiple pieces, printed annual report or brochure, or special event materials such as invitations, announcements, cards, etc.
It sounds pretty good. I mean, this is basically like a brochure, and it is a collateral piece for a restaurant. Is there any other ones, though, that we see that we may want to just make sure that maybe don't sound more correct? And I'm not trying to lead us into saying that that wasn't right. I just want to make sure. Did you do this logo too?
Yes.
So when you submit this, would you want it submitted for the print piece or the logo? See, that's where it gets a little tricky. That's where it gets tricky. Because if we go with that first category that we discovered, it will be viewed as printed collateral. But if it was a logo and it was an element of advertising, or it was possibly part of a campaign, maybe you did some posters or outdoor billboards for this, you know, they're all design projects, but they all feature this as a logo, that may be more of a cross-platform campaign even. Yes, sir?
Can you enter both?
Yes, you can.
So she could enter the logo as well as that piece?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I have other pieces, like I have the crowler, the beer crowler that goes with that.
Cool.
And but it's a lot of other stuff too.
And it can get expensive if it's a lot of stuff really quick. One of my favorite categories is that, I keep wanting to say collaborative campaign. I said it right earlier. Line. No, the cross-platform campaign. A cross-platform campaign, it's a little more expensive as a whole, but it allows you to submit as many pieces as you want. And it is about telling a story of a campaign. So there's one specifically about a campaign and there's one specifically about brand identity. So in your case, you may want to submit the one that is about a brand identity because then you can showcase it on many, many different pieces. And as a whole, as it's judged, it could look quite powerful. And that may be the perfect category to be in. This piece, if you did it just for the logo in here, this may be a lot of overkill because they can't really look throughout the rest of it when they're just reviewing this as a logo piece. I typically always do the one I can't remember what it's called. What's that?
Is it integrated?
Integrated campaign, thank you. See, it even started with an I. Cool. This is really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Do you have any more packets?
Tons of packets. Those packets, I don't. I'm sorry, guys. We only brought 5 copies of each style, but on our website, aafcos.com/addies, there's a series of 3 big red buttons. One is for the student categories, one is for the professional, and then there's a cheat sheet too. There's a few of these as well. This is a little cheat sheet that was made by our board here that will go step by step exactly how to put together every little piece that you're doing here. Yeah, I'll pass this around here a little bit. Who here came and didn't get one raffle ticket at least, too? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Which is the good bowl? Round one. Packaging. Anyone here is doing any packaging? Anything that's 3D? Something that just won't work in an envelope? You might.
I have a project, it's the last project of the semester's packaging, so.
Oh, very cool.
Depending on how it comes out, I will submit it.
I think you should.
Yeah, I think I should.
Packaging is a lot of fun. It's a great place to kind of push yourself because it's a lot tougher than flat, especially when it comes down to putting it together. So with that said, with packaging, typically as we kind of make something or it's a prototype of something, it's not always going to be, of course, as rigid as a box would be as if it was manufactured. So it's fragile. I would always suggest that you really do kind of pack that into a box just as if you were shipping it somewhere. Put in a little bit of that colored confetti or something so it can bounce around a little bit. The last thing that we want to do, because we do have to transport these from a drop-off point to a place where a judge views it, and then we also do have a viewing party. That's 3 places we have to move this stuff. And ultimately, we really want to make sure it's as pristine as possible for the judges so that they can see it, again, in a pristine setting. And the last thing you want is a really cool, elaborate thing that had to be folded and you spent 3 hours with it and it got crushed. Shellac it. No, you don't have to shellac it.
I just have a question. I don't know if I missed this or not, but do you suggest us turn glass and framing it like that, or just?
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to. This was one nice piece that definitely, you know, it does stand out in terms of its presentation, but it's not a requirement. My biggest, again, kind of like hint would be is just don't make it so that it looks like you didn't care when you put it. Epson prints always work really well, those high gloss outputs. I found out from another student actually that Costco has really cheap and awesome printing. I remember seeing those prints, those photography, and there was like so much depth, the blacks were amazing. So I'm sorry if some of you have school systems that do want you to print there, but Costco has them serviced quite a bit, probably more than school. So I would at least pay for that nice print. It does not have to go as far as framing. Here's another piece from a student, and it was, again, more of a simple traditional mounting, something just on some board. Label.
Yeah, I will say though, I think it is good to, you want to kind of present it in the best light possible. I mean, like, they're not going to be considering the frame as this piece is going to be better than this piece. So you definitely want to present it with some sleekness. Yeah, so it can help sometimes when it's on frame.
I mean, you're not going to be judged on how good of a frame it is, unless there's the frame category. But distractions, yeah.
Is there
Yes.
a frame category?
No, sir, there is no frame category.
Confusing us.
But it's kind of that attitude, just as much as like when we put portfolios together, blemishes, creases, poor prints, those are just distractions from what you really want someone to pay attention to, and that's your creativity. So, but you do not have to kill yourself and spend a lot of money on some of this stuff. It's not a requirement.
So, for posters, I have a couple posters that are just pretty much illustrations as well. So would you suggest to submit it as a poster or as an illustration?
So what's on those posters? Are they kind of a fine art piece more? It is promoting an event? Okay. It may be something where you kind of want to ask some peers too. Ask a teacher like, hey, do you think that this is a stronger illustration as itself if you're not sure? Or is this really a strong promotional event? Because when you go in illustration, even though we want to be fair and say that this is going to be judged on illustration or technical, it's going to be judged a little bit on maybe what that judge sees as good illustration. So it's a little more subjective. If it's an event, it may be more, can I clearly tell when it is, where it is, who it is, some of those more fundamental mechanics of what the promotion, how a poster is supposed to work for somebody.
And also, there's like some contact information from real people. Do you suggest for me to replace that for just placeholder text or just submit it as it is?
Oh, you mean like on the pieces itself? Is it contact like phone numbers and emails and such?
Phone numbers.
A phone number? Well, I don't know. I've never heard of someone calling anyone off of these. I don't think you should tamper it per se.
Or put a 555-1234 number.
I mean, if it's something you can do before you print, I don't know if this was like an original illustration and now you have it digitized, or if it was digitized in the beginning. It's not going to hurt you if you do make it a 555.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and if you are a student, it doesn't have to be a real project. Like, I know that we've had capstone projects, or we may have something as an exercise. When I went to school, I had to make a calendar for Minwax. It was so cool. Not really. It was fun, though. But it's not necessary for a judge to be able to say and say, oh, this really would work for Minwax. That's not important. It could be the XYZ finishing deck company, which they need to work on their name and branding a little bit, but.
Does it always have to be work that you did through the school or something that you did on your own can also count?
No, you can do it on your own. Just the calendar year is one buffer. So you can't do anything from 2016 per se, 2015, 14, et cetera.
And you can't be paid for it if it's student work. If you get paid for it, it becomes professional work.
Got it. Okay.
So we have one student who presented tonight who submitted some stuff to get it through one of the classes, and it had a massive reading. Like, it was in front of over 5,000 people. I'm not sure who got paid for it. Is that only the stipulation in regards to submitting as student work? Is the paying side of it? It is reading work. It was a huge project.
So say that again now, he wasn't paid for it?
Like, he wants to know, when we originally talked about it in the past, I thought it was that if it wasn't a used and real situation, that's what qualifies as a student versus professional. is the drawing line now if you got paid for it or not, in regard to submission as a student?
Yes, because sometimes you'll end up doing internships for real world clients and then use it and stuff, but as long as they didn't actually pay you for it, yeah, it's still student work.
Cool.
Yep, that's the only stipulation on that. You have to make it while you're a student and not be paid for it.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the invoice manifest form piece that is talked about in the rules? It says we're required to sign that. Is that like when we drop off our entries?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so great question. The invoice manifest form, which I don't have because once the competition closes from a previous year, I can't go back and reprint them. But essentially it's like an expanded receipt. It goes over everything that you had in your cart when you were building up that order, and it's a little more simplified. It's more of that line item kind of showing you, oh, they had 5 submissions, they're all for these categories, marks how something was paid. It may mark check, which is where we need to have a check at the drop off, and then we mark off on both sides paid of check. And then yeah, you do sign it over because it's kind of like your contract of you submitting this, understanding that you've adhered to the rules and understand, hey, my artwork's not coming back. I do understand that this is going to be seen by many, which you want. Oh, of course. I know I see some familiar faces too that made it to our viewing party, but I do recommend you come to that, especially if you are a student. It's a great place to network. You get to be in a room full, like I think we had probably a good, probably 40 people for the whole evening at least, just completely crowded Comcast. And everyone gets to look at each other's work and comment it. You get to be a little fly in the wall and see how some of these professionals are talking about your work. Really awesome experience.
And that's on January?
Yep, that'll be in January. That happens after the judging, I think the 19th?
Yep, we're finding on
19th. Location TBD.
I'm sorry, what's the date of the judging?
So the judging is on the 12th. It's 1 week before the viewing, but it's not an event. We don't necessarily have people come out to see the judges because it is like a one-day event and it kind of takes their whole time up to do it. Anyone doing anything digitally? Sorry, I'll come back real quick. Doing something digital?
Perhaps.
Okay. Audio or video?
Yeah, it's video.
Video? Cool. So with video or anything digital and even websites, judges will get the list ahead of time and they may go ahead and actually view it outside of the TV screen and the room that we put them in. They may not necessarily come to the day and start opening up their laptop and looking at a website. They may get a lot of that done on their way over here. So with that being known, you may want to look at your stuff, look at it with regular headphones, put on some headphones that are high fidelity, do something without headphones. Just make sure things are mastered. If it does have audio, things are clear. You do want to just make sure, again, really in any circumstance that that piece could be seen or heard, that it is nice and clear. You had a question?
I was wondering if anyone would be willing to come and talk to a product photography class, because this is all new to us, about what kind of things that we should be doing that would fit into categories.
Okay.
Because we don't normally put label around, logos and brand names when we photograph something. Even for products, we're mostly learning about how to light something so that it emphasizes the different aspects of why it makes why that product is different or better to buy, but we don't actually put a logo on there. So just kind of things like that. Is that important that we do that in order to submit, because that's what makes it actual advertising? That's probably a really simple, stupid question. But.
No, remember, there are no stupid questions. No, I think that probably falls under, there's an elements of advertising category. Because it is a part of advertising, like you said, you may actually be photographing stuff that could be later for mock-ups, or it could be a product that there is no brand for yet, that could be like a promotional product that a lot of people will buy and put their logo on. Those are all elements of advertising because you're still having to advertise that product to some kind of audience to opt in or buy it.
Can I check that there really quick too?
Absolutely.
So somebody I work with, Laura Cameron, she actually has her students do a project at the end of the year where they're supposed to sell an item. And one thing I saw the last semester she did it that I thought was really cool was she actually had her students work with the photography department to get photographs. Yeah.
Dustin and I were together.
Awesome. Yeah. So you kind of yes. So that's kind of what you would probably want to have in mind when you're doing that photography is like maybe even you just go find a client and make up the project, or maybe you talk to the students and find out what their project is. and you can photograph whatever you want, but that kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for when they get the photos from you, when they design and stuff, and that'll kind of give you a guideline to photograph it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It just that, and so Jessica and I are kind of working on something like that, but
No, I don't know that if it is going to be that strict. If something didn't go to press, you know, like if it's still professionally made, he was paid for it, but it didn't get like printed.
If he was paid for it, still counts.
I think so too. Did you get paid? Better got paid. Yeah.
Michael, we got a question for you.
What's up?
So how do we know what the judges are looking for?
How do you know?
Yeah, I know it's kind of a very big question, but like, so Juan and I were just chatting about the photography stuff. How, like, what are they looking for in that? Say, for example, she did, I don't know, beer, for example.
Okay.
And she shot this beautiful piece. There's no logo. There's no nothing. What are they looking for? Are they looking for lighting? Are they looking for composition? What exactly are they focusing on in those individual categories? Because otherwise, we're just submitting a photo going, I don't know, it's a crap shot. I don't know what they're looking for.
Well, but you are in an environment, whether school or professional, where you have essentially a task list, right? Whenever you do a project, and you just named off everything that makes a great photo. Was it lit well? Was that color done well? Was the balance done well?
Okay.
That's, you follow your heart, follow your intuition, exactly.
It's just general design principles that they're looking for the most part.
Yeah, because they can't necessarily judge, you know, again, like, oh my gosh, it's the best abstract photo I've ever seen. But if it was something that fits the category of what makes an abstract photo or what makes a product shot, what's important to those things, then you're on the right path. You do kind of follow your heart in those senses and be critical of yourself. You know, these things do cost money, so you don't like shotgun stuff. Make it very targeted. So I kind of want to ask you a question. This is Gina. Gina's also on our board. Gina works as a graphic designer at the Gazette. She sometimes probably has some funky categories of advertising that they do and possibly editorial that they do. And sometimes even within that, there could be photography for it. Does it get confusing sometimes of what you should submit for?
It can, yeah. Yeah, more specific questions about that. I mean, honestly, the photographers are going to focus on the photo categories and the designers, not so much. The final intent of the product is what matters.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Absolutely. And there's judging, you know, like for a magazine or even for the Gazette or like the Independent, there's a cover specifically even for, you know, for judging. It may not even be an editorial spread. Like there is one specifically just for the cover piece.
Or the entire magazine if you did a whole magazine. And also back to your photography question. Last year we submitted some photos. The judges made a comment that they wish they had seen the ad that the photos went with. We just submitted the photos by themselves, and that kind of dinged us. So if you could submit the ad with it to show context of what the photo was for, that would be helpful.
Is anybody submitting any kind of website projects or interactive pieces? Well, just in case you have a friend who is, and they're like, hey, I wish I was there, I had a question. Make sure it works. I have had, as a professional, I have had websites go out there and have discovered afterwards, oh my God, none of my social media links worked. My client didn't even know. And I felt so dumb, you know. Those little things, again, are distractions. Even in a website world where we do hope pixel for pixel it can look as much as we do force it to, it could be wrong. So test on everything.
I just have a question. I have a t-shirt design, and it's printed on a white piece of paper. It's pretty blah.
The t-shirt?
Yeah.
Do you have photos of the t-shirt?
I Photoshop mocked it,
Okay.
and it looks better that way.
I would include a mock-up with the t-shirt in it.
Oh, okay. So then
Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. I've done this part too. So you may not have ever had like a physical piece, or it may have been for a client that's outside a market or a school project. Put those mock-ups in it. Put something very